Welcome, empowered healer. Take a breath with me. Feel your heart open, your spirit grounded, and your crown illuminated. Today, we will walk together on the ancient path of the mystic, a journey not chosen by the mind, but by the soul. This episode is a sacred remembering of why we are called to the spiritual path and how to live in integrity with the gifts the great mystery has placed within us. Let us begin. So welcome back. Today we meet. It's a sacred day. It's the end of the month. This is the time of the ancestors when the veils are very thin. Everyone who's in the spiritual world is gearing up, getting ready. Some are practicing ancestral rites. Some are doing ceremonies for abundance. Some are having fun with the kids, celebrating Halloween. There are many witches out there doing Samhain. And today I wanted to go into what is the mystic. So over this past week, I've been sitting with different people, and the theme I noticed emerging was, what is a spiritual path? And I thought for today's episode, we would take it back to the bare bones of what it means to be spiritual. Beyond all the rituals, the candles, the incense, the bells, the crystals, the look. What is it really to be a spiritual, mystic person? And there is a difference between someone who is spiritual or seeking a path of enlightenment, the occult, and various paths that you may see on this journey. And that's why I always encourage people that when you are seeking your spirituality, it's about your heart. It's about what is inside of you that lights you up, that feels like home. For some, it is an organized religion. For some, it is the ancient paths. And for others, it is just something like nature, going out with the trees. It doesn't necessarily have to be something organized with rules and regulations of this and that, but truly and sincerely, the call of the mystic is the calling of the soul. It's a calling to go deeper into what is within your heart. It's not about escape, but it's about embodiment. Mystics travel throughout time, and it's a path where you can find it everywhere. And what I mean by they travel throughout time is that when you look at the path of a mystic, it is the same. It is a calling of the soul. It is something that transcends time and space. And it's a devotion to the divine beyond the dogma. People like Black Elk, Hildegard, Yogananda, Buddha, even Jesus. Those are all mystics. Now, some of those people, after their death, religions have formed that became dogmatic. But initially, the path of a mystic is a person who travels the off path, the path of their soul, the path of their heart, wherever their calling is, they showed up. And it always begins with a calling, a restlessness, a knowing that there is more than the material world. And oftentimes, this calling comes through illness, loss, spiritual awakening, spontaneous psychic sensitivity, could be the death of someone close. And it comes oftentimes like a thunder, like a thunderbolt that just hits your house. And now you're in a new reality. And if you're listening to this, you've likely heard that whisper, that thunder, the one that says, there's more to me than what I've been taught. And the path of the mystic begins the moment you stop seeking out answers outside yourself and you start listening to the sacred voice within. So throughout this series, we've been talking about psychic gifts. You know, what is a shaman? What is a medium? What is a psychic? What are the clair abilities? But beyond that, what I'd like us to really go deeper into today is, what does it really mean to search, to seek the divine? What is the great mystery? What is it to live and embody the spiritual? That's the part that no one can teach you. People can teach you what various candles mean. They can teach you what various teachings mean. They can teach you what the spirit guides are and the ancestors and the this and the that. But no one can teach you the connection you have to the spirit world, to the great mystery, to the beings that are all around you, that are both assisting you and sometimes not assisting you. Only you can know what that is. And the way you can know it is through direct experience, through meditations, through visualizations, through ceremony, through journeys, through initiations. It's that unseen whisper that calls you to make decisions, to behave certain ways, to go certain places, to pursue certain avenues. And when you are in alignment with the highest source of who you are living your best spiritual life. And there is a difference between expressing psychic gifts and living the mystical life. Because there's a lot of people who have psychic gifts who are not mystical. And there's a lot of people who are mystical that don't have psychic gifts too. They don't always go together. But when they do go together, it's a beautiful mix, because when you express your psychic gifts through the mystical lens, you develop kindness, compassion, harmony, balance. You're not dogmatic, you're flexible, and you're open to the endless possibilities of how spirit can speak and touch someone's heart, how spirituality can move someone to become their highest and greatest self. And again, the mystical path is a path of going within and not looking for it outside, whatever it is. A spiritual path refines the soul. It strips illusions, it awakens your purpose, and it teaches sacred responsibility. True mystics always walk between worlds. They bridge heaven and earth through service. This is not a comfort path. It is a path of remembrance. It walks in a different light. And when you walk this path of a mystic, your path aligns you with your destiny, your soul's contract, your ancestors, and a higher timeline. Doesn't mean that it will be kumbaya land and peaches and roses and you'll never experience pain and suffering. That's not a mystical path. In fact, most of the time, mystics suffer greatly because they are learning to walk between the worlds. They are learning to let go of everything that they were taught to remember who they truly are. And there's not necessarily a guidebook. There's not a book that I could say, oh yes, if you read this book, you are going to, be 100% enlightened and everything will just be like, your heart's desire. And of course, in a modern world here in America, what would enlightenment look like to most people? Oh my gosh, I woke up today and there was $1 million in my bank account. All my problems went away. I met the love of my life. We moved to Beverly Hills. I mean, a lot of the spirituality here in the West is focused around material wealth and material beingness and what they call manifestation. And oftentimes that is not a mystical path. That is a material path, which there isn't nothing inherently wrong with that because you need material things to be comfortable in life. You need a place to live. You need a car, probably. You need groceries. Those are just things you need. But there's a difference between that being your whole life and all you care about and seeking something higher in your life. Understanding that once your basic needs are really met, there is something grander and bigger for your life beyond just the basics. There's something deeper and more profound that if you dare to even look, it may find you. And to walk a spiritual path is to live as a bridge between the visible and the invisible, between the human and the divine. The purpose is not perfection, but presence. And the mystic learns to meet all of life, joy, grief, expansion, loss, as part of their initiation. And right now, there's a lot of people going through initiation on so many levels, just so many levels of initiation, from very hard to very soft. There's many initiations happening in many different ways. And for some, it is a stripping of the material world. For some, it is a stripping of the religious world. For some, it is a stripping of family. Some are going through extreme family issues right now, family division, family strife, loss of loved ones. Initiations are happening at a rapid and extreme rate right now because we're heading into a new era. It could manifest itself as a loss of a job, a loss of a relationship. It can be the beginning of a new job, a new relationship. Sometimes those initiations aren't actually endings, they're beginnings. And after the fun and games are over and the newness wears off, the tests start coming. Initiation is life. And when we are living our life in balance, in harmony, in such a way where the material and the spiritual converge and align, everything from the way you spend your money to the home you live in, to the city you're in, to the state you're in, to the relationship, like when everything aligns and converges where it meets that center point, that's the closest you can get to perfection. That's the closest you can get. And it takes a lot of effort to get there, depending on your background, depending on your, you know, whatever you were born into and within and had to deal with. It can be more challenging or less challenging. But since the beginning of time, if you read any mystical text, it's the same. It's the same. Politics has pretty much remained the same. People haven't changed all that much. We might drive different cars, live in different houses, make more money, whatever. But the human condition itself has not changed dramatically since the beginning of time. And depending on, where you live and the culture you were born to, you may have more or less what we call karma than others. I study with a group of Tibetan monks in a monastery in India who are refugees from Tibet. And something I learned from them is that the more spiritual your culture is, the higher your calling, meaning you can pursue your spiritual path easier and you probably have less karmic debt than those of us living in the West. The West is considered a spiritual desert. Is not a place that is easy to become spiritual. It's not a place where you're going to meet mystics roaming and giving you wisdom and praying for you and giving you hope and comfort. It's a desert. So you have to really search and dig and, just look at our algorithm. You would have to really search for someone to bring that wisdom to you. And most likely it is coming to you, but you would like swipe away because it might not be that appealing. It may not look flashy. It might not sound, the way a polished ad would sound, but it resonates in the heart. And the mystic will find you when you're ready. You're really ready to go deep. Psychic gifts are spiritual senses. They are just extensions of your intuition. So people get really caught up in clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, this, and that. But psychic gifts, like I always say, is like your hand. You have the seen, you have your fingers, and then you have in between the fingers. Those are the psychic gifts that we all have. Some will develop them more, some won't. Some are sharper, some are not. but they're not for performance or ego validation. They're for service and discernment. So psychic gifts are not something special. And how people express psychic gifts are all different. Some people, like me, will be guides and teachers, and some people will just be holding the light at Home Depot or any other place, like the doctor's office, their nurses. A lot of nurses are mystics, teachers, but even your mechanic. Have you ever met somebody who just exuded this light and you couldn't explain it? But they didn't have like a sign outside that said, I'm a healer, I'm a mystic, I'm someone here to help you. But they helped you. That's them living their mystical life. They're being of service. And gifts awaken in divine timing. Many times psychic gifts don't come until later in life because you have to go through initiations or deep emotional purification. Sometimes after divorce or loss, these gifts turn on. And then the person goes through an examination of, who am I? What does this mean? And what do I do with this? Right? But if you are someone called to a spiritual path, and the first thing about spirituality is most people, especially if you're leaving a religion, you may not know where to start. You may suddenly have this like awakening and you don't know where to start. And you might not be called to a specific religion. And you may not be even called to a specific spiritual practice. So what do you do? Well, the first thing I always recommend is just start a practice of meditation, silencing the mind. Even if you can do a nature walk, but what you want to really cultivate is silence. And silence is the gateway into intuition. There's so many different ways to meditate, and not all of them are beneficial. But the most beneficial is when you can just sit quiet and listen. You can start 1 minute a day and work to 5 minutes and then 10 minutes. And it really just depends on how chatty your mind is, because the mind is constantly trying to grasp, it's trying to understand, it's trying to reason, it's driving you nuts. So silence is the way that you ground. It's the way that you clear, you purify. And you can practice clearing and praying. For some people, it's smudging with different herbs and, sprays and cleaning and clearing and literally cleaning their space. For some people, it's just sitting and praying. But work on quieting the mind and clearing your outer and inner space, and stay rooted in humility and truth. And when you're in the silence, you can see what answers emerge. You're like, what can I do to really begin my spiritual path? And then the answer will come. It may not come immediately, but it may come through the day, the week. You're walking down the street and suddenly you're like, you see a sign and it says, oh, Reiki class. And you're like, huh, what is Reiki? I don't know what that is. Let me check it out. And it's within your time and money frame and it works out. That's a mystical experience. If you go somewhere and you see, oh my gosh, I was on Instagram or I was on YouTube or I was on some social media site and I saw someone and I connected with that and I thought, oh, that person might have something for me. They might have an answer. Maybe I'll book a reading. Maybe I'll book a session. And then, that's what happened to me. I met my first teacher that way. And it wasn't actually something I pursued. It was something a friend of mine kept saying, like, we should do this. We should do this. We should do this. It was something she wanted to do, but she kept pushing it on me. And I was like, okay, fine, let's do it. And thankfully, I really am thankful for that lady because she opened a door. She opened a door that I wouldn't have opened myself. So, just stay open to these mystical things. And when you're just first starting out, I always say the basics to learn are clearing and purification, clearing and protection. You just don't want to go down, let's say, dirty paths. If it doesn't feel right to you, don't pursue it. But if it feels right, follow the right, follow the good, follow the thing that lights you up. Because you just really never know how life-changing it can be. When you're sensitive, your sensitivity can overcome you until you are rooted in the truth of who you are. A lot of empaths, especially, are bouncing from this to that, to this to that, and unknowingly they're following outside energies that have nothing to do with them. Instead, an empath has to work even harder to ground into the truth of who they are and to remain in their own energy and not get swayed into other people and other things that are not theirs. So one of the things empaths always have to ask themselves is this mine or is this someone else's? Is this something I think and feel, or is this something someone has impressed upon me? And this is really a lifetime journey because empaths always have to think before they do something, especially if you have people pleasing tendencies, which is unhealed trauma. Because when you want to please everything and everyone, it's really hard to know who you are and what you want. And that's why I really stress energy clearings and energy protection. The thing is that psychic gifts are not entertainment. They are instruments of divine communication. And a true mystic learns to hold them with reverence. You don't use your gifts, you become a vessel through which the divine speaks. And the divine speaks anytime. It's like that inspiration or what they call the aha moments or those times and spaces that that's not coming from you as a person or an ego, but a much broader and bigger place that is mysterious and sacred. And when you come from that place, people listen. The universe responds. There's depth and beauty, and it's indescribable. When you're living in both worlds, balancing spiritual devotion and human experience, it is peaceful. One of the reasons I think for me early on why I really fell in love with meditation and silence, especially, is because when I first started on my spiritual journey, I saw a lot of stuff I didn't like. I saw a lot of fear based stuff. I saw a lot of superstitious stuff. I saw things that made me question what is the spiritual path. And I'm grateful because my first teacher was all about going within. Like, she was an incredible psychic and she was an incredible shaman. And she just knew things. She's so sharp. But one thing she never did was she never intruded upon what the spirit world was saying. And instead, she just kind of opened the door so I could experience it deeper. And that's really what the mystical path is. So I'm sitting with my students. That's the doorway in. We do activations, we do meditations. We explore what is going on within. And of course, shadow work is a big part of that because your gifts are blocked by the shadows that cast them. And if you have incredible gifts, you have incredible shadows. And that's the balancing. That's the living in both worlds, is the light and the dark, and to embrace both. But not to be in a fear-based space where now you're moving from fear because you're afraid of what the spirit world will do to you, or you're afraid of what, darkness is there. But instead, the shamanic path is about embracing the spiritual path, embracing the light and the dark, embracing all aspects of who you are, and overcoming the negativity, overcoming the challenges, overcoming the limitations, and to really develop and open your consciousness to become a better person. To be a modern mystic is to walk through the marketplace with prayer in your heart. You don't need to isolate yourself in caves or monasteries. The modern mystic is here and now. It is bringing the sacred into daily life, into your business, your art, your relationships. And the path is to become the living altar. And it does require balance. It requires listening deeper, creating sacred routines. For some of you, maybe you want to do everything in the morning. For some of you, it might be at night. For some of you, it might be, sacred baths, moon rituals, ancestor connection. It may be going out into nature, hiking, biking, skiing, driving. All these things are part of it. It's not separate, because it is almost impossible for you to go off into the woods and spend years and years to develop and just fully dive into your path. Some can do it, but the majority of people can't. But that doesn't mean you don't have to, you don't have to give up the calling of your soul just because you can't go into the woods for years and years, even months, even weeks. It takes time to sink into that type of lifestyle. People always say, "Oh, I'd love to live off grid." I'm like, have you ever lived off grid? Do you know what that even means? It takes time, a lot of time to quiet the mind. You can live in the middle of nowhere, but when you have like a noisy mind, you might as well be living in the city. Can you really go off grid and sit in silence and love it? That's why I think cities are amazing for spiritual development, because in a city, your truth comes out. Somebody cut you off in traffic, somebody calls you something, you have a bad day. I mean, all those things are spiritual triggers that develop and cultivate your character. And if you learn from them and you really follow and you listen, and you can sustain you can sustain peace in the middle of chaos and craziness, that is mystical. That is, people will seek you out. That is wow. Because it's the hardest when you're in a city, when you're under pressure, when you're under stress, to be calm and peaceful and trust the divine than when you're sitting on the mountaintop praying and meditating and everything's bliss. So, something to think about. I wanted to dive into this topic today and hopefully bring you some words of wisdom and medicine and something to think about in your own spiritual life. Because I see how the modern world does like videos and teachings and snippets. And it's really like how to do this, how to do that, what is this, But the essence of spirituality and the path of a mystic is something way more deeper than a how to. Anybody could create an altar, but can you live as the altar? Can you be the bridge between heaven and earth? And can you bring peace and happiness to a world on fire? And as we head into these next years of the new era, there are going to be so many fires, so many things, so many ways that the mystic can rise from the ashes of the old. We rise to the top. So I invite you to remember that the path of the mystic is not a straight line. It is a spiral, always returning you home to the heart. Your gifts are sacred. Your calling is real, and the divine walks with you. May you listen deeply, walk gently, and serve wisely. Until we meet again, many blessings. Aho.